Also, as an addendum, it's not exactly a difficult Scrutonian argument to say, well, you can actually go back to the 1800s. People can hiss and howl and wail at you all they like, but you sort of look at them deadpan and say, no, you can actually do that. If you start making Scrutonian arguments in Britain, then they're sort of hard to refute, really, because again, he was the original. Well, we tried to kill this guy, it didn't work, and now we sort of realise we've made a mistake because we've actually read from history and we've realised that that was a bad idea. The whole point of Britain hanging on is you look after people like that and treat them well. At least at the end of his life, some people did, thankfully. But of course his work continues after his death, so the Scruton Society, or whatever they're called, is still going on. I'm sure they could also provide a comprehensive philosophical education to the moronic criminals in Birmingham. But the whole point is to actually work in that kind of job. You kind of have to think of that level anyway. So when you're dealing with other human beings, there's the physical, they're monkeys that you're dealing with them, but there's also what's going on in their head. So you may think this is kind of irrelevant in terms of the sort of job we do, but no, it's not. You have to understand who these people are so you can actually lawfully interact with them if you think about it logically. So unless you understand the various matters that may affect their life, you may miss things and then make the incorrect legal inference, etc., etc. So this is basic competence. But of course, if you are competent, you realise that the organisation has become paresticised effectively because of the crits. So public money is, rather than healthy inflow of what is effectively water, so money is obviously water, it goes to projects and flows through to keep the arteries of the country running. But the arteries in Birmingham, of course, blocked because they're churning out these hostile people who are attacking us, and in the court service we're torn between helping people and dealing with the increasing sort of levels of violence that beplague the place. But I mean, something's got to give logically, and obviously it's happening to Birmingham Labour, whether one likes it or not. Because you make the 1800 arguments and point at the Tower of Babel a bit, I think people sort of get it. The good thing about living in the information age is the average person isn't actually that stupid. So if you can point them at some of the historical parables, they look at Birmingham and say, oh, right, okay. And you start to be able to have intelligent adult conversations on the doorstep in Manchester, maybe. A few years ago you couldn't do that really. But I think as the crowning becomes so obvious at the moment in terms of Burnham, and his poisoned cup begins to drain his life force away, you can see a lot of people sort of bursting through the surface and taking things back, basically getting things on an even keel, dealing with sort of the rot in some of these badly governed large organisations, and turn things around that way. I mean, I now I'm thinking about it, and Peter Cheese I think has gone. I caught that in my peripheral vision as I was bouncing around. So if that's true, that'll be a huge positive step. He was running the CIPD for several years and was responsible for sort of toxic guidance pumped into workplaces. So if you looked at their website, if you looked at sort of how to behave in the workplace stuff, it was just poison effectively. So it was destroying organisations, letting these increased gangs in. So he's going to be criminally responsible for that, because it's affecting Birmingham's court service. You've got people gaining access who are clearly not trained, causing problems, trying to steal things, that kind of stuff. So he's liable for that because we don't follow their guidance, we follow the law. So if he hasn't got the law correct, it's down to CIPD and their liability. But Darren Canning can't defer to CIPD either because he's a director, so he's got criminal liability. If his guidance has been harming people, which it has, no guidance issues. Again, you can work out with the clinic what the pounds and pence costs are in terms of harm, but it's going to be just quite a loss, just logically in terms of general functioning. If the employees were disabled without the wheelchair ramp and they are not disabled with it, then the time without may incur a legal penalty. So Birmingham's got to work that kind of stuff out in terms of medication. They would need to speak with the doctor who understands the human brain, and of course these would be licensed clinicians. So licensed clinicians, of course, are trained. They know about terpenes and the way the brain works. They'll be trained in things like psychotherapy, so they know the patient is following the literature. This is not sort of a recreational pursuit, this kind of thing. It's assisting them in terms of in terms of reading the CPT's literature and John Bradshaw, this kind of thing, helps make the correct inferences and think through the, or do the reframing kind of stuff. At the end of the process, you are observably and objectively healthier. So again, but this is one for the lawyers. But again, just think about this through in terms of the entire organisation. So if you refer to Pincor's book, so Charles Pincor's book, unfortunately named these days, but Counter Workcraft is a great manual on spotting these people and dealing with them. But he relies on sort of secret balance. They do sort of preference falsification. So you can't really do preference falsification under police caution, which of course they're going to have to do now because of all the criminals. So if you think Pincor's work through to legal proceedings, which again a clever lawyer would, you just do that in terms of legal compliance, existing law, don't need to change the law, and you have an existing team who can go into Birmingham and deal with bureaucrats that way. Canning explicitly has been offered support outside, so he's told to speak to people like Helen. Helen is sort of a liberal ethics expert, you could say. She thinks about this kind of stuff for a living, but they're again refusing, playing around, because the idea behind the organisation is, of course, it was intended to be sort of a case system. You have the enlightened rules at the top, like Canning, who pumped the nonsense in. Because so much nonsense has been pumped in, it gave them their legitimacy. But of course, because it's been popped like a balloon, people are just insulting it, tearing it apart. It's obviously nonsense, people are getting sued. He has no legitimacy. All he's got is this kind of thuggery. And the thuggery in this case has gone to pretty serious violence at this point, both direct violence and plenty of proxy violence. And this was potentially being targeted at people significantly weaker than me in the sort of job where the job is to look after weaker people. So again, the example on the way out of the department was, well, if I'm picking up a phone and the person is picking up straight away, that's already a very bad sign. I expect this to be sort of long abandoned and long gone, or there's nothing to resolve. But if we're doing this sort of baby step stuff and we're doing basic health stuff, non-compliant being battered back. But when I can't explain to the case officer why this is bad, after 17 years I'm not having them in the department, or they're being retrained, or something's happening. But because there's no proper authority structure, because of the corruption, this is why you get corruption out of public bodies. So corruption is like a cancer. It gums up your arteries, stops the white blood cells from coming back, fixing things, clearing stuff out, and your organisation just succumbs to it eventually. The possible concern is that's obviously happened to the family, so that was obviously medical malpractice that allowed that to happen. But all that kind of stuff can be done separately or for another day. At the moment it is just basic security, basic training, basic adult behaviour, basic common sense, people who are intelligent enough to have thought about history and I don't know, living in Britain, not America, shall we say, and thinking about British law, not American law, and we'll finish the addendum off by saying that the executive function needing to pull the trigger is again on people like Naylor. So if the British are going to let guys like that skip out of town, or terror Americanism, skip out of Birmingham and not answer to his behaviour, then the country can't be governed logically, can it? You can't have guys like that turning up, doing huge damage to people's lives, and being allowed to just vanish like a trace. Vanish like a ghost, sorry, without a trace. So no one's got an idea where this guy's gone, but the McGrath is still here, we're not leaving. We just can't get a passport because David Fern has refused to respond to the passport office. But yeah, I think possibly if the handicap wasn't there, maybe I would have a passport at this point. You would think about ways to get one. But again, normally if you've worked in a place for 17 years, the bureaucrats generally don't refuse that kind of instruction, especially not when they're looking at arrest.